All right, so now what? The Seahawks are done with the draft. They signed Jonathan Hankins. They probably still have a little bit more work to do. What's the sort of now what situation for a team like Seattle?
Well, before we do that, I just got our researcher to do all this research off of my top 150. He does this every year, and I wanted to see, coming on with you guys, where the Seahawks
cool.
fare. And again, it's just off of how I had the players ranked. So I always am, people do draft grades and all that kind of stuff. Like I think that's kind of silly, but this is just this is concrete numbers based off of how I stack the players 1 to 150. So if you look at the most players drafted among my top 150. You had the Browns and the Patriots with 7, and the let's see, the Seahawks were with 5.
So that's just over average. Should be what, 4.7?
So sorry, Seahawks had 5 top 150 picks, and they got 6 top 150 players. But this is where the good stuff is. The total value added. So if you were to just rank the players, and you get you get 150 points for the first player on my list, and 1 point for the 150th player. So if you just kind of look at it that way, in terms of the most added value, the Seahawks were third with 547 points behind the Browns and the Patriots. And then lastly, one of the other things they do is they go points over expected. So if you had the first pick, the expected value would be 150, and you can kind of figure it out as you go. So the Seahawks, just based how I had it, they were plus 129 on points over expected, which put them 4th.
Wow.
So how I graded the players, I thought they got quantity and quality, basically, is what I'm getting at.
Mm-hmm. You hear any rumblings after these rookie mini camps, Daniel, from around the league and maybe even in Seattle of, okay, here were our picks, and here's our takeaway from actually what we saw now in our own uniform?
I've stopped making those phone calls over the years because I tend to find a lot of bias in those initial. I mean, he got out there. I mean, he was the first one on the field. Okay, I mean, you should have seen this. Yeah, I mean, he's already learned everything. I'm like, how many plays?
Wow,
yeah. 6. Like it's just there tends to be a little hyperbole coming out of these early
gotcha.
mini camps. So I've stopped kind of paying attention.
All right, well, let me ask you this then. This is a go the opposite way for a moment, because I think every stat you just gave about what your researcher came up with is super positive about the Seahawks. Brock and I have been incredibly positive about this Seahawks draft. I think we all really like what they did. But Mike Sando, who we love, did a piece where he interviews and gets a lot of information from other execs, anonymous execs around the league. And they also had some nice things to say about the Seahawks draft. But this was the other side of it. So I'll ask you what you think of it.
Yeah.
The catch. Seattle targeted non-premium positions with its first 3 picks, getting the second guard, the second safety, before taking Arroyo, who was consistently one of the most praised players in the Seahawks class. So essentially taking a guard, a safety, and a tight end, 3 non-premium positions with their first 3 picks. Should we be more concerned about that than we've been?
I don't think so, because I don't think they forced it. And I know, you always want to try and load up on the line of scrimmage, but you just can't force that. And I think you've even seen, to me, and I'm biased, and I readily admit it, because the 2 teams that I worked for that I feel like have been as good in the draft game as anybody are Baltimore and Philadelphia. And you look at Baltimore, took Malachi Starks. You look at Philadelphia, they took an off-the-ball linebacker in Jihad Campbell. Like the draft, you can go in there with a plan in place, and we're going to address the premium positions. But if it falls a certain way, you get in trouble when you're trying to just force it and jam it in there. At the end of the day, the goal is to have blue players. You want to have elite players scattered across your roster. And depending on who you talk to, they'll tell you we need to have 8 to 12 like blue caliber players, guys that could be considered in the top 10 of their position in the NFL. In order to win it, you've got to have those elite players. So if you can get one of those elite players at one of those non-premium positions in a draft like the one we just had, I mean, that's just doing it smart, in my opinion.
How big a deal is magnetism at quarterback in your evaluation as you go through this process and have over the last couple decades, DJ?
Yeah, and I love that word. I always go back to this conversation that I had with Steve Young, decades ago, when I was just a young kid, and I just remember asking him, hey, in your opinion, I've talked to a bunch of different people about this, but what makes a great quarterback? And the way he explained it was that quality of being able to go into the huddle and to look everybody in the eye and say, over my dead body, are we going to lose this game? And so whether you want to describe that as, this big energy that fills the room and everybody wants to be around them, or to me, I lean more towards just there's that competitive greatness inside of these guys that attracts people. Maybe that's the magnet that attracts people. But that always, I heard that over 20 years ago, and that always stood out to me.
I think Jordan Palmer said to us yesterday, there's not going to be a better QB room than what Seattle has now. From that regard, from a character standpoint, and even an upside of talent, obviously Jordan biased because he's worked with Sam and now working with Jalen. But when you now look at that room with Drew Lock, obviously Jalen Milroe and Sam, my goodness gracious, from a just QB character quality, is there a better room in the league right now?
Those are all good dudes. Those are all really good dudes. Josh Allen is as good as it gets in terms of how he is and what he's all about. I always assumed, I don't even know, I think Matt Barkley might have retired, but I always assumed that Matt Barkley was just always going to be the 3 wherever Josh Allen was, because he literally was such a good dude that he kind of survived on that. But no, I think it's important. I think there's having the competitiveness of, like, we all want to play. Let's not hide that. Let's be honest about that. But there is also that, hey, this is the pecking order, and my job is to try and get myself ready to play as the 2 or the 3, but I also need to serve the starter. And I think you get some bad rooms when those lines aren't really drawn that way, and it's I'm out for blood as the number 2 quarterback, and I don't know if that always makes for a good room.
Yep.
If you were to have an opportunity to chat with any one member of this Seahawks draft class, you got 11 guys in the draft class, and you could give them some advice on, hey, if you want to make this team now, if you want to be successful, if you want to be even more successful maybe than where you were drafted, which one player would you love to just have a quick conversation with and give him one good piece of advice that you think would help him and the team?
Yeah, I would probably start, and I think we've talked about him being one of my favorite guys that they got in terms of the value, but I would probably start with Horton, and I would go tell him that at your first, and I've done this, I've actually told this to some people before, is, hey, at the first mini camp, I want you to, as soon as you get on campus for the first time in the building, I want you to walk down to the special teams coach's office. First of all, look it up and figure out who it is before you go in there. Go in there and just tell him, use me however you want to use me. I want to be a gunner. I want to return kicks, which he's done. Like, I want to go, and I'm going to start right there. I'm going to dominate that universe, and then I'm going to figure out, once I dominate in that universe, the other universes are going to expand for me. So I've always said, if you're not a first or second round pick, one of your first moves should be to walk right down into the special teams coach's office and try and make an impression.
Because you're a little under the weather today, DJ, and you're fighting, because you come on this show serving us with information.
It's a battler.
I'm going to play to your strengths. I'm going to throw you a couple here in your wheelhouse. The 2 places you've been. We played some Howie Roseman sound yesterday from the War Room, where Howie really put a charge into his guys on that 3rd day and said, find me starters. I want 2 starters. I don't want depth. I want to take some swings here. So on day 3 picks of the Seahawks, 7 of them, right? 7 guys in this draft class. Who would you put stock in to be in a possible starter or 2 out of those 7 picks?
Well, I'm when he gets healthy, Riley Mills to me has starter ability, and he carried a starter grade for me. So that's just let's take our time here, and maybe that's a year down the road, but we're going to take our time. We're going to get him healthy. But that to me is, and I agree with that philosophy. If hey, let's chase the upside a little bit versus the the stability and the high floor on day 3. So that one first and foremost is one. I think Damien Martinez can carve out a role. You got to make the team first, but I think he's someone who can carve out a role, can be a short yardage back, can be a 4-minute back, put some games away. When you hear the rumors pre-draft, like Kenneth Walker might be traded, and where what kind of good graces is he in? Like, to me, if I'm Martinez, I'm sniffing some opportunity there to try and carve out and find a role on this team. And again, it starts on special teams, but I could see him eventually getting to the point where he could earn some carries. So those would be a couple that would come right to the top of mind.
Well, Salk's a blink scout. We've talked about that, right? Blink analysis. This is I'll admit right here, I'm doing a total blink analysis. I'm taking a 20-second clip of John Benton, the old line coach, working with the guys, and just praising Bryce Cabeldue, and just with some of his movement skills, just in this one little 20-second clip. Can you tell me why a guy that's 6'5", 300, started 50 games, ran sub 5, why that guy was a 6th-round pick?
Well, we can start first of all. He was not a combine invite, so
Correct.
that's telling you kind of what the league is saying, because a lot of that comes from that. I'm pulling up my notes on him. The issues that I had with him, just struggle with speed. So I don't think the athletic testing necessarily showed up on the tape. I thought the toughness was there. I have in my notes just the redirect issues, beat by speed. I do love his effort. He looks to finish. That's going to be something that's going to gain you a lot of popularity with an offensive line coach, with a strain and an effort and a want to. So that to me was kind of the pluses, where he tested out of the gym, and then you love the effort, the tenacity, the toughness. Now the issues that showed up were he's getting beat on the edge with speed, and then some of the redirect athleticism stuff gave him issues.
As a tackle, not a tackle, but slide him in the guard where he's going to be.
He needs neighbors. He needs to play with neighbors. So that's kind of gives you the whole holistic picture there.
Gotcha.
But that's why I've always said I've always gotten in trouble with that with offensive line grades. If I were to be self-critical and go back and evaluate, self-scout, I think we've even talked about this. I've gotten in trouble when I've overvalued athleticism and when I've undervalued intelligence and toughness at those positions. Those guys find a way to play.
Do you have any concern about Jalen Milroe's decision-making after he ends up in number 6?
What's the significance of?
I mean, it's just the worst quarterback number. I mean, it's just awful.
Well, I think Bubby Brister would have something to say.
That's exactly right. I mean, I think Bubby Brister he literally defines this. Yes.
Who else is a 6?
It's Baker Mayfield,
Cutler?
Bubby Brister, and that's it. Jay Cutler. Exactly.
Yeah,
that's what I'm talking about. What's our level of concern here?
It's kind of a kicker number.
It's a horrific quarterback number.
Yeah.
Horrific.
Well, I can tell you that my first game as a redshirt at Northeast Louisiana University, I came in there. I wanted 17. I couldn't get it, so I got 5. I was very excited. 5's a good number for a redshirt freshman. I mean, I kind of built like Garcia a little bit with the Niners. I was just like a stick. So I'm like, that's fine. So I get out there, and my first game we played Minnesota at home, and so they have your jersey laid out there, and I go to the equipment manager and I go, hey, question, two questions. I go, number one, why do I have number 6 for? I thought I was 5. And he goes, well, we have double numbers, and since you're redshirt not going to play, we have you in a 6. I go, okay, I get that. You spelled my name wrong on the back of the jersey. That's maybe the bigger issue.
I don't think it is.
Jere, not Jera. So I literally lost my name and my number before the first time I put on a college uniform. That's a tough pill to swallow.
I'd rather have a misspelled name than I would wear number 6 as a quarterback.
That was the only time. I got back to 5 the next week.
Let me give you a more serious question. How'd the rest of the NFC West make out?
Shoot, I mean, the Rams just getting next year's 1 that's a huge win.
It is.
The Niners was. I'm not going to say it's a good or a bad draft. It was maybe one of the more surprising drafts to me, and that they went so heavy on defense, which, okay, I can understand that because they had a lot of holes to fill. But for a team that's been like an attack front, they took a lot of run defending, like front 7 guys. It was literally, guys who are much better against the run than they are in the pass game, and that started with Mykel Williams with their first overall pick. So that one kind of surprised me just because it seemed like there's a philosophical shift there. And I don't know if that's because, the Rams are a physical run team. If you want to go outside the broader picture of the NFC, you got Saquon Barkley and the Eagles, that offensive line. But that was a philosophical shift. Yeah, Detroit is a physical team. So that just kind of, from being a team that was always attack up the field to more like kind of sit and hold the point of attack type players, that one shocked me. But and then you look at the Cardinals. I thought the Cardinals actually had a really good draft. I liked what they did.
Mm-hmm. I think I'm going to know your answer on this one, especially as you spent so much time with Klatt, and Klatt and I are the same on this one. Colin Cowherd, we just had him on, DJ, and asked about Jalen Milroe playing 6 or 7 snaps. Right, he had said that on his show, and Salky asked him about it, and he pointed kind of to the red zone and what have you. Do you think that's a healthy dynamic? And do you think that's realistic that Jalen Milroe is going to get on the field for 6 or 7 snaps a game?
I would say that, that maybe conservatively the 15th time I've heard about a quarterback entering into the league that's going to play a package of plays, and I can tell you we're 0 for 15. It never happens. It's always discussed, and it is. You know what it is? It's always one of those things, those ideas that's great upstairs, and you come up with this upstairs plan, and then when the message gets delivered downstairs, something gets lost in translation, and that never happens. So we'll see. I mean, again, I think it sounds fun. Let's get him a package of plays down the red zone, some short yardage stuff, and it's been a long time since Cordell Stewart was doing that with the Pittsburgh Steelers, man. It just, teams don't do it.
Yeah. So I asked Brock this, I asked Lyle Mora, I asked Colin earlier, I'll ask you as well. Do you think the Seahawks' next franchise quarterback, and I'm talking about the next guy on this team who will win multiple playoff games and be considered a franchise quarterback, however you choose to define that, do you think they're currently on this roster?
I think that the fact that there's a pause there probably is not great in terms of the confidence. But I think they can win playoff games with Sam Darnold. I do. I think Sam's good enough to do that. I think they put the right things in place around him, continue to build up. I mean, I don't think what he did last year was a fluke. I know the way it ended was not what anybody wanted to see. But I still think the ability's in there for him to do that. Now, I also have always talked about the confetti test. And that is, if you have a quarterback on your roster that you can imagine the confetti falling on him, I don't know that they have that guy.
I thought that was Klatt's line. You stole that from him.
Such a thief. He's such a thief.
And just to be clear,
this is what he does. He gets me about 4 Diet Cokes deep, and then next thing you know, he's stealing all my stuff.
And Milroe doesn't enter into that for you. You don't see him as a potential franchise guy eventually.
I don't. I just think there's so much distance to travel in the pass game. But I mean, hey, let's see where it all goes. I know there's a lot of raw stuff in there, a lot of ability in there. But it's just, to me, there's a lot of assembly required.
All right, so let me follow up on it, because we did have an interesting conversation with Jordan Palmer, and one of the phrases he used, which I kind of liked, was, he said we would be able to judge Milroe by how well he puts the ball in play. Essentially saying, we know he's going to make plays. Like, if he's in the game, he'll make some big plays because he's just so explosive and running, etc. Splash plays, the highlight reel will be awesome. But how well does he essentially function as a game manager, as a point guard, getting the ball to other people and allowing them to make plays without taking a sack, without missing them by 30 yards, whatever. It feels to me, anyway, from the outside, like that's something you could teach somebody, to just be a decent game manager and to just do the little plays, because the big ones are going to come. If he could do that, couldn't he become something of a franchise quarterback?
I would argue that that's probably the hardest thing to do.
Interesting.
The exact opposite is being efficient and not going big game hunting and taking what's there and being patient. I think that's the more rare trait that you'll see. There's a lot of guys that can hit the ball out of the ballpark. It's just, to use that baseball analogy that I think Jordan was going for, it's the guys that are just constantly putting the ball in play and moving the line. That's, I think that's one of the harder things to do. It's one of the reasons why Brock Purdy was missed by the entire league, because the entire league was looking for the reel of the splash plays and they didn't exist. It turns out the guy was just playing point guard and doing the efficient, easy things consistently really, really well. And that's why he's had the success that he's had.
I got called out appropriately yesterday or Monday by one of our peers, because I am known at OTAs to have Brady Henderson next to me, and Brady's got the roster, and instead of putting my readers on in front of everybody, I'll ask him, hey, who's number 65? Hey, who's this? Who's that?
Nice.
Yeah, it's a vanity issue for me, and hopefully I'll get over it. But if Daniel Jeremiah were with me and Brady out at OTAs, the first OTAs for the Seahawks, where would your eyes be, DJ? Where would you want to watch this team, this roster, these acquisitions, both through this draft and people they've added, obviously, quarterback and wide receiver?
Well, for me, if you're looking at the whole team being out there, I don't really get anything out of watching the trenches in these mini camps, because you're just not, you're not padded up. There's nothing full speed. I just don't think you're going to get anything out of that. I want to see how they're going to utilize Cooper Kupp versus Jackson Smith and Jigba. I want to see kind of how they carve out, because they're very similar players. They do a lot of the same things really, really well. So how do they complement each other, and how are they going to use those two guys? That's probably where my eyes would go first and foremost.
That's good. Can I sneak a question? Because we're starting to see some moves. And by the way, John Schneider told us, like in the acquisition phase, there's free agency. They were quiet in, obviously, with big money.
Yeah.
There was the draft, which they were very active with 11 guys that we're all loving. And then there's this phase right now that we're seeing as we see Pickens get traded. We see Gabe Davis get released. This other acquisition phase with salary cap moves. Is there a corner out there? The Seahawks did not get that in this draft. It just did not fall that way, especially in the third round where they like some guys. Is there a corner possible salary cap? They got a lot of money. Can make some moves here. Is there anything that you'd like to see added, if not corner? Receiver Gabe Davis just gets released as well. Do you see a move or two possible?
I mean, everybody's been talking about Jair Alexander, pre-draft. I mean, that was kind of the big name at that position that you could see, get pried out of Green Bay. So that would be the one that just comes, completely top of mind. I think we are going to see other moves. It's been very quiet on a guy like Bryce Huff, who did not really fit for the Eagles. It just didn't make sense, but he's still on that roster. I think it's one of those guys that, as an edge rusher, that I think they have to wait till June. But that, to your point, there's a lot more moves that are coming. And so at the corner position, off the top of my head, that Jair is the only one that comes right to top of mind. Usually, teams are not looking to discard any talent at that position at this point in time, but that's one that you have heard.
Seriously, can we thank you?
This is coming to an end.
Yeah, it's a bummer.
Well, we'll negotiate about maybe the season again.
No one said it was over forever. Just sort of this run of draft conversations.
Right.
I will say, I know Brock wants to say thank you, but I will as well. Just thank you so much. This was awesome. Enlightening every single week. Tremendous content for our listeners. Educational, certainly for me, and I know for Lyle and Maura. We've really enjoyed this. So thank you so much. This has been awesome.
Well, I enjoy both you guys. I enjoy your company. I feel like I learned a lot through this whole process, including how to pronounce your name. So that was
that was good.
That was the most exciting.
That was key. Yeah, that was a key moment.
It took me a while. Slow learner, but I got.
Well, he had to be available, right? Availability is the best ability, and the fact that he was available in the lead up to the draft for every show is a big deal.
Yeah, your attendance was way better in the spring.
Thank you. Yeah. Try. I do the best I can. Basically, you guilted me into it, so I was like, I can't take a Wednesday off. The one thing I know is that I got to be here.
Hey, by the way, there's a lot. I did not know this, but there are a lot of transplants from Seattle down in San Diego and in Southern California. And I've had, I'm not saying like dozens, but I've had a handful of people that I'm friends with that listen religiously to your show on the app down here and have never complimented me or said one thing about anything I've ever done on television, but have really enjoyed these appearances. So
I'll tell you what,
you guys for making me popular in my friend group.
The day I get fired or retire, I will be joining you and all of those expats in San Diego because I think it's about the best city in the country. DJ, thanks, man. We really appreciate it.
Guys.
All right, we got to go. There you go. There's Daniel Jeremiah. This has